Canada's legalization day, province by province. Ontario, Manitoba, and New Brunswick, and I believe one other didn't give their sales data in time. I think that Ontario didn't actually have like stores open, like brick and mortar stores open on legalization day. I think that they were just offering online sales for that first day, which in a way is smart, I think. Because we'll get into it. Here in Nova Scotia, from the looks of things, we actually did the biggest sales in the country, which is hilarious. Made over 12,000 cannabis transactions on the first day of legalization at different NSLC locations, doing just over $660,000 in sales on one day. Of that, almost 47,000 were online sales. And you think about it, like here in Nova Scotia, you actually have to go to the NSLC in order to get a card that allows you to log on online to make that purchase. So like that's a lot of people going through the NSLC, and I can tell you from personal experience, because the NSLC in my neighborhood is one of the ones that has a cannabis section. The lineups are still pretty bonkers. Like I went over there just to grab a couple of beers the other night. This was on Friday night, and the lineup was still like around the building at about 7:00 on Friday night. So that gives you a sense of what's still going on. Like it still hasn't calmed down. I would like to kind of go in there. Like I haven't smoked pot in a number of years now. I'd like to kind of go in and sort of see what's what and see if there's something there that might be something for me. But I'm telling you right now, I am not going in there until the lineups are much more reasonable, especially when the weather is turning cold and rainy and wet like it has been today as I'm recording this. A few other little bits and bobs. British Columbia did not provide total sales. They did say that they did nearly 10,000 different unique cannabis sales. This is great, just great reporting from this Global News article. The government did not provide total sales, but the cheapest weed you can buy in the province is a pre-roll for $4.20. So the baseline is set at a minimum price. BC made $41,000 in sale that day. That is just, I love, like, well done, BC. I was actually taking a look at the different prices in and across the country in terms of the lowest cannabis cost per gram. Nova Scotia is actually like significantly like lower than I was expecting. Like I was kind of expecting it to be one of the higher ones, not considering the territories, just because everything's obviously more expensive in the north. But like really surprising to see like Manitoba and Saskatchewan are $12 and $13 per gram for like the cheapest stuff, respectively. Like that was a real shocker to me. Alberta $9.24, BC $6.99, except for the $4.20 pre-roll. I guess that's probably not a full gram. It might be that Saskatchewan and Manitoba are focusing on pre-rolled joints, or like not full grams as like the primary purchase point. I don't know. Maybe that's what the case is. Hard to say. Nova Scotia 633. Low point in the country seems to be Quebec at 525, and then PEI at 565. So I don't know. Interesting stuff. Like I said, I can tell you anecdotally, Nova Scotia being the top sales on the legalization day, that doesn't shock me at all based on what I saw and continue to see at my local NSLC. There's of course also the Clyde Street location, which used to be a liquor store, was shut down in anticipation of the marijuana legalization and became sort of their flagship cannabis store. all they do is deal in cannabis. I haven't gotten a chance to go down and even see what that store looks like in person. Like, I mean, it's a liquor store, whatever. Liquor store converted into a pot store, I guess. But that'll be interesting to see as well. I'd like to go down there and just take a look and see what sort of stuff, because they're also going to be selling the accessories, I think is what they say for it. So I don't know. Just curious to me that this is the world that we live in. It's strange to think about. I think it's a really great thing. Like I said, I haven't smoked myself in a while, but I think it's really fantastic and fabulous that this drug is legal now. Also interesting is conservative leader Andrew Scheer coming out and saying on CTV's politics show Power Play this past Thursday that he won't actually commit to promise that cannabis will remain legal if his party were to win the election next year. He's saying instead that they'll scrutinize the rollout of legal pot and go from there. To quote him, the Conservative Party will do our due diligence, examine the consequences of this decision, and we'll examine the reality on the ground. We have to be realistic about what a change like this means for society and all the ramifications. I am skeptical of this, and I'll tell you why. Like, I don't think that Andrew Scheer, unless like it were actually like anarchy, unless Reefer Madness, the old hilarious in retrospect morality play, anti-drug video from like the 30s, I think. Unless that actually came to pass, I do not think that this is going to go anywhere. The legalization of cannabis here in Canada, I just don't see it being reversed by anybody anytime soon at all. Honestly, I think this is just a case of some really brilliant pre-campaigning from Andrew Scheer. Brilliant. Also incredibly cynical, but brilliant nonetheless. I don't think that there's any way that the Conservatives would make cannabis illegal once again. The taxes on cannabis is a revenue stream for the government, both federally and provincially, that Scheer wouldn't want to give up. Like, it's a sin tax, which is something that Conservatives, generally speaking, are pretty comfortable with. So saying that they won't commit to reversing legalization, that brings in the votes from people who think of it as being like a huge drain and a terrible thing for society, and it's the devil's lettuce and whatever, while like getting their votes in while doing literally nothing. If you say that like we're not going to actually say that we're going to do something about this, we're just going to monitor the situation and make a choice based on that. As long as it doesn't have to be a political football, like a campaign issue beyond that, it's just one of those things where you just are not saying something, but not saying something, and that brings in the types of voters that are concerned about it. And I think it's really smart, because like there's literally nothing for Scheer to lose for saying that he won't commit to keeping things legal. Again, I think it's incredibly cynical. I think that it's what people have a problem with in terms of politics, but I think it's smart campaigning on his part. Speaking of brilliant, I'm sure that it's been one of those things that's been passed around all over social media. The little girl, I believe, in Winnipeg, who sold out of Girl Guide cookies in front of one of the legal marijuana dispensaries there. Not all heroes wear capes. I think I shared this on the John Dulong Show Facebook page, trying to get that a little bit more active in terms of just random little stories that I see throughout the week. Also, the first, speaking of Winnipeg, I might be confusing stories here because I do know for a fact that the first driving while under the influence of cannabis ticket of the new legalized cannabis regime was handed out in Winnipeg. I believe it was like a $250 ticket at like 1 a.m. on legalization day, which, like, way to go, buddy. It's legalization day. It's 1 a.m. You're like the only car on the road and you're going to drive under the influence. Like, that's like that's a little bit of at work there. I think I believe that's the survival of the fittest right there. The wheat and the chaff being separated, and I'll let you figure out who the driver of that particular vehicle is in that case. Anyhow, I think that's all I've got for legalization day. We'll stay tuned on this. As I get the opportunity to maybe take a look at the Nova Scotia, because what I do want to do is take a look at what the store is like, what the purchasing procedure looks like. I want to look at the online store as well, and see what that's like. And like I say, if I do see something that I feel like I can comfortably partake in, hell, it's legal. What's to stop me? So anyhow, after this, we're going to talk about Saudi Arabia. We're going to talk about the WWE. After this. All right, well, the official story now from the Saudi government since last week is that Jamal Khashoggi is in fact dead. He did in fact die in the Saudi embassy in Turkey. It was when they went to ask him some questions. He lashed out and they got into a fist fight. He died from injuries sustained during the fist fight. And then I suppose he just fell into that bone saw multiple times as well. And I'm sure that the questions were if he had the time. And I'm sure that he wasn't about to be tortured. I'm sure all of these things because, the Saudi government, it's full of rational people who have a real respect for the rule of law and really understand the value of a free press. Speaking of people who understand the value of a free press, which by the way I do think that the Saudi government does understand the value of a free press. It's a value that they don't want in their country, but they understand the value of it. They understand what it offers. So speaking of near dictators or dictators, President Trump believes the Saudi account of things. Doesn't want to throw out the arms sales though. So that's a very important thing. The current climate surrounding this, of course, is having major impact on many different sort of sectors of the world who are in business with the Saudi government. Many different private companies who are in business with the Saudi government, Saudi Arabian companies. You see this with Microsoft and Google and stuff pulling out of different things. From the looks of things at this point in time, it doesn't look like the WWE is going to pull out of their planned event in Saudi Arabia, Crown Jewel, as we talked about last week. Dave Meltzer, who's kind of like, for non-wrestling fans, he's kind of the wrestling news guy. Like he's the person who kind of does the most reporting and is kind of seen as the most legitimate of the wrestling reporters out there. He said that basically on his radio show that basically it looks like unless the State Department or Trump himself says don't go, they're planning on going. Still a lot of reports from all over the internet that various talents are not comfortable going to Saudi Arabia, and it's one of those things, right, where you've got a company that's openly celebrating its women, but they can't go over and wrestle. Openly celebrating talents who are LGBT. Their very existence is under a threat in a regime